Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Catch. Thank you so much for joining me here today. This is your one-stop shop for cryptocurrency analysis, among many other things. Now, we're going to take a look at Sandbox again. I know I've referenced this in the recent past, but it is obviously taking off again, and we want to make sure we understand good entry points, best practice, and help you understand those things before going into it. So thank you to my community for reaching out and asking that I cover this. You're all fantastic. I really appreciate you and love your support. Moving forward, I'm not a financial advisor. You must know that this is for educational purposes only, and only you should do your own research, right? You are responsible for your trades, no one else. But that being said, I want to help educate you on best practice so we can find good entry points. So we're going to take a look at the details, the technical charts, work our way up, or actually down from the 1-day chart to the 15-minute. Kind of just cover all our bases here. We'll even look at Bitcoin and Ethereum first. So feel free to reference my Patreon account if you'd like to show your support. I've got a signal group there trending at about 80% average success rate. Feel free to jump in and jump on that. Also, furthermore, I have a Telegram community, really good group of folks there. Check that out in your own time. That is free of charge and fantastic news and updates and everything along the way. Right? So come on in and we'll see you there. Feel free to message me if you'd like. Without further ado, let's go ahead and check it out. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at Sandbox. And just before we do, we always look at Bitcoin and Ethereum first to get a baseline of the market so we know exactly what's going on, just to make sure we understand the correlation between these coins and big picture, best to take entry when you know all the right angles, okay? So we're looking at TradingView.com, desktop application. Recommend the paid versions because you can have a lot more indicators present at one time. But if you'd like to follow along, I use the 50 and the 200-day simple moving averages on the 4-hour charts. Now there's a good time frame for every moving average, but that's just kind of what I utilize to give you a baseline here. And we'll look at that a little bit later too, more in depth. But for the most part here, Bitcoin has some major support and resistance levels. We saw 300,000, 300,000, maybe in a few years, 30,000 get tested and essentially stayed below for a while. I was really surprised to see it break up above as quick as it did. I was expecting a dump to 28,000 and lower, but that didn't happen. Rallied back up, and then of course we had the B word video, shot the price up even further. Retrace came over, and we just had this next major increase there. What was that? I actually haven't marked that yet. That was about a 4.5% 4-hour time frame. It's a pretty good 4-hour candlestick. So we'll see what happens here soon. But bottom line here is that the price is over both moving averages. So the orange line here is the 50-day simple moving average. The 200 is the purple. So we're up over both now that the 4-hour chart is closed, or 4-hour time frame essentially closed above. That basically tells us we have confirmation that the price is holding above, and that is a really, really good sign. So Bitcoin's in the clear. I'm speculating that Bitcoin will go sideways and or retrace down to test the 200-day simple moving average because it's notorious for doing so. Every time it tests, it either rejects or stays above. This time it stayed above for only 8 hours and came back down. We're looking at a very similar scenario right here. Okay, so just keep that in mind, not trying to be pessimistic at all, but I don't think we're out of the doghouse just yet, and you want to be aware of that. So if you're going to set a stop limit, I would say set your stop at right about 33,000, and you might be surprised that it will likely bounce off the 200, or perhaps continue on down. You never truly know. When you flush a toilet, it's got to go somewhere, right? So up on the top, we're looking at 40,000 approximately. This is actually 40,500, but 40, 41,000, that's a pretty close resistance level that we want to become a support. It was tested a few times. Even prior to that, 42,000 was a major resistance. So we've got some room to grow still, but we're about halfway to our goal, so to speak, up over the 200. And the next major milestone is 36,500. Moving on to Ethereum. Now, I marked these earlier, at least this one here, because this kind of correlates with 36,500, because Ethereum's doing a lot of the same action, price action as Bitcoin right now. Traditionally, it breaks away and does its own thing. It's like the go-to coin when Bitcoin does poorly, at least it used to be. Right now, it's the mirror coin that does the same thing. I want to do what you're doing, Bitcoin. That's what Ethereum's telling us. Either way, we're up over the 200-day moving average and the 50. Fantastic. We've also got a major resistance level at about 2,400. And I mentioned this in my other video, but I want you to recognize the fact that all these support and resistance levels are at exact numbers, right? They're not like 568 or some random number, right? It's almost always at an exact round number. The reason why is because the industry is leaders. The bots, the ones that control the market, they're the ones actually utilizing that as a specific major support and resistance level, right? So just keep that in mind. It also kind of correlates with the Fibonacci retracement tool too. Conversation for another day, but just remember round numbers. So if you're going to set a stop loss or limit, so to speak, or entry limit, you want to make sure that either your buy limit or sell stops, whatever the case is, you're either just above or just below, so you don't get stopped out or don't get your entry. Something to think about. But right now, Bitcoin is essentially producing this price action from Ethereum. So whatever Bitcoin does, Ethereum will do so as well. I wouldn't expect to see any major runs from Ethereum outside of Bitcoin yet, but perhaps when Bitcoin breaks free, 36,500 between 36.5 and 41 or 40,500, I think we might see some price action from Ethereum. It might become a little bit more independent. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at Sandbox, you old bag. Let's see here. One-day chart first. Okay, we look at the one-day chart to get perspective on the big picture. Average true range kind of identify that. It's really not much else you want to disseminate from the one-day chart, because the 4-hour chart, in my opinion, is the go-to. I'm a 4-hour chart kind of guy, and it's always served the best utilization for me as far as the MACD, RSI, and the moving averages. But the one-day chart also serves a purpose too. So let's just take a quick look. So first of all, RSI is under 70. No big deal. It's trying to peak up above. It could break above, which is fine. But just bear in mind when the price comes above, that time frame, you want to consider selling when the price comes back down. In other words, when the RSI is over 70, it doesn't mean you have to sell or trim your position. You can utilize the little bit more price action, a little bit more movement, and maybe sell when the price comes back down closer to 70. You'll notice you'll get an extra 3 to 4% more, 5 to 10%, depending on the situation. It works out favorably. So just consider that. Also note here as well that the price is above the 200 and the 50-day moving average, and we're in pretty darn good shape. So nothing else to really say except the fact that the 200-day simple moving average worked as a support level at about 36. Sorry, is that 36? Yeah, 36 cents. And it didn't really matter. It bounced off of that hard and shot back up. So the last 4 days, Sandbox has done quite a lot of movement. We're looking at about 105% increase from bottom to top in 4 days. So if you average it out, 25% per day, that's pretty solid. That is a really good, strong return on investment if you got in somewhere in the 20 to 40 cent range, right? So hopefully you got in around 18 cents when we're in the dumps, because right now 71 cents is looking pretty tasty. All right, so that's the one-day chart. Not much else to know. Oh, wait, let's look at the MACD. See, we have a convergence here at approximately, well, exactly the 22nd. Big surprise, it just ramped up right there. We'll just mark that for fun. And then furthermore, see, was there another convergence? Looks like there was on the 28th, so I'll mark that too. All right, so I just like to look at that and how it correlates to other time frames, because oftentimes the MACD on the 1 day on the 4-hour chart are really good indications of buy signals. At least if you're going long and you're considering a position that would last for more than just say a day or two, right? Because why use the 1 day chart if you're only going to hold for 1 day? Okay, it makes more sense to hold for a little bit longer. You don't want to hold on for too long, but that's kind of the general concept. Because again, the 4-hour chart and the 1 day chart are more along the lines of a swing trade, which will be held somewhere in the range of just say 2 to 30 days. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the 4-hour chart now. Now, as we can see, got some peaks and valleys. It ramped up here on the 14th, sold off pretty hard back down to the 16th. And I'm curious, how did Bitcoin look back then? See, really, 14th, 16th, Bitcoin is going sideways and down. So we can see here that Sandbox is performing on its own, right? So again, there's good fundamentals. Do your own research on this one. There's reasons why this is performing independent of Bitcoin. Very few coins can do that, but I have noticed that a lot of coins that are capable of doing that, they are the Axes, the Sandboxes, the ones that are more independent. They fulfill a specific role. So look at the fundamentals here, but you'll be surprised to see what's going on there. So here's kind of where we're at. Now, first of all, let's take a look. So we marked this on the 1 day chart. That's kind of a convergence, right? So at that point, you could have got in, would have been perhaps a little bit late. The better time to get in, again, this is why I'm a 4-hour chart kind of guy, is right here. So we look at the convergence. Jeez, those are pretty strong. Just to clarify the MACD, it's a moving average convergence divergence, right? It takes the moving averages of the 12 EMA and the 26 EMA, and they converge and diverge, right? So you were looking for a convergence for a long position. That's this guy here. So we're looking at July 20th at 2100 hours. So let's go ahead and mark that guy. So July 20th at 2100 is right here. All right, so just go ahead and mark that too. All right, so the reason why we mark that is just so we can look at other time frames to kind of see the correlation and how that responds. Because as you can see, the 4-hour chart told us a little earlier that we want to consider taking entry, whereas the 1-day chart's a little bit of a lag, right? That's why the 4-hour chart is a better time frame for swing trading. Not to say the one-day chart is bad. If you're like just throwing money randomly into the wind on a 1-day chart, that's fine. It will still work sometimes, but 4-hour chart will get you there a little quicker. Furthermore, if we're taking a look here at the RSI is definitely over 70. So what's the common rule there, right? If you've seen in my videos or perhaps my tutorials, you'll know that RSI is, you don't sell as soon as you come up over 70, right? So in other words, had you sold back here, you would have sold like right here. The trick is to consider selling your position when it's coming back down, right? So generally speaking, we want to see the RSI calm down and come closer to 70. That would be a case in point where you'd be able to squeeze a few more percent, a little bit more out of your trade. Either way, things are looking really good on the 4-hour chart. Let's look at the 1-hour. And this is where stuff gets kind of interesting. In other words, we disable the simple moving averages. They're no longer relevant on the shorter time frames. The 1-hour chart is the best for Ichimoku Cloud, and you guessed it, TD sequential. You probably would have only guessed that if you're familiar with my channel. If you're new, I'm sorry, you wouldn't have predicted that. But if you did, kudos to you, gold star for the day. Looking at the Ichimoku Cloud, though, let's take a look here. Now, here's the interesting thing. This is why I like to mark the MACD convergence on the 4-hour chart and the 1-day chart to give you perspective. First of all, 1-day chart, again, we already identified this, a little bit late to the party, right? So it's above the cloud, great, full-on confirmation. It wouldn't have been a bad entry point, don't get wrong, but it just would have taken a little bit longer to get your gains. And you have a later position, which isn't bad, it's more secure, it's more safe, knowing you're in the right direction, but it's also not as beneficial as you could have gotten an entry earlier, right? So work with me here. So let's go ahead and remove this because we've already identified that that's a good entry, but it's too late in the game. But look at this guy here. This is the 4-hour chart that we MACD'd, right? We MACD'd on the 4-hour chart. And what I'm getting at here is that the MACD, when we had that convergence, the price swung up, the 12 intersected with the 26 in an upward fashion, we marked that. So somewhere in this 4-hour time frame, we had a convergence telling us the price action is moving bullishly, right? Right here, I mean, obviously, had you got in here, it would have been a best case scenario, but we can't predict that, right? That's not full on confirmation. We want to have confirmation knowing the price is in the right direction we're heading. So step number 1, identify MACD on the 4-hour chart. Done. We did that here. Second thing we look at, and what we do is we consider taking entry on the Ichimoku cloud when it crosses above the cloud. So if you are new to the channel here and you see this cloud, it's basically just kind of there's a lot to it. I'm being very, very brief. In fact, there's like 3 or 4 indicators I'm not showing you here because they work, don't get wrong, but it makes more sense just to kind of generally use the cloud. So when the price is below, it's considered a short position. So had you shorted back here, you would have made some profit. Not a tremendous amount, somewhere in the range of maybe 5-10%. But had you, took a long position here, for example, or right there where the MACD converged, you would have been doing fairly well right now. So for example, this would be an entry point here. So just say we took entry here. Hypothetically, we push that up to the very top. Again, that's not possible. Finding the top is almost impossible. 79%. We'll round up and say 79. Or, just be safer, right? So we can go ahead and go down and say where it's retraced right now and say you exit your position now, you would have had a 67% increase. And that was only using the 4-hour chart, MACD, identifying a convergence, marking out on the chart, and looking at the 1-hour chart and furthering your confirmation by taking entry when it passes through the cloud. Okay, so that's kind of just a quick summary of how to swing trade effectively. Those are like the foundational skills that you want to utilize, and I think that's something a lot of people miss. But regardless, that's generally speaking what we're looking at. Now let's go ahead and take a look at TD sequential to identify exhaustion, and we are darn near there already. So if you see these numbers here, first of all, let me zoom in a little bit. Let's go back. Let's just say right here, we look at this 1. As you can see, it counts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then resets to a 1. Ultimately, you're looking for a 9, and the 9 tells us that there's a state of exhaustion. Now, it doesn't have to hit a 9 to be exhausted, but commonly it'll retrace when it does, or within a few bars after that. So as you can see here, this one kind of retraced, reset the numbers, went 1 through 4, and then reset again 1 through 6, back down to 1, and then it started here at a 1, now it's upwards of a 7. So even if we get a couple more red candlesticks, it probably hit a 9 soon. That'll tell us that we're likely going to see a retracement. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you use TD sequential. Again, there's a lot more moving parts here as well, just like the cloud. But the simple concept is that you're shooting for an 8 or a 9 approximately. When you see that, there's a good chance that you've reached exhaustion. In other words, the direction it's heading will likely turn the other direction and retrace, or the inverse. It's bearish downward momentum, it will consider swinging upwards. So again, just something to note, because right now when I'm predicting the price, I'm not really predicting anything. I'm just basically saying that we've got 2 more hours of likely some bullish momentum where it could more than likely retrace in that time frame. Okay, so I would say in about 2 hours we could see the price reverse, because it is a bit on the overextended side. But even though I do love this this bullish trend, I mean, if you take a look at here, see a step up, over, step up, over, up, over, and then super up, or super up, whatever you want to call that. That's higher than the previous ones, right? So it's usually going to retrace back down. Commonly retraces about 50 to 60% of the way. So we should expect the price to be somewhere right here, which will likely be the new support. And no surprise, right there, we've got the price getting stopped out for 2 hours in a row right at that point. So there's a good chance that the price retraces. We see a 9, turns back around, it'll bounce off 68 cents and perhaps continue upwards, or go sideways for some time and then go upwards as well. Now I'm projecting it's going to go upwards based on the momentum from Bitcoin. If Bitcoin retraces, however, keep that in mind, even though Sandbox isn't contingent on Bitcoin's success, it is still impacted and still influenced by Bitcoin sell-offs, right? So it's basically one of those things where it's like the increase is amplified when Bitcoin does well. The decrease is also amplified when Bitcoin does poorly. They don't move synonymous with each other, but they certainly move together. All right. So that's kind of what I want to show you there on the 1 hour chart. Again, TD sequential, Ishimoku cloud, only used on the 1 hour chart. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that say otherwise, but to me, I have the most success there. TD sequential has more flexibility. You can technically use on the 4 hour and the 1 day chart. In fact, it's proven to be very beneficial in those time frames. But again, 1 hour for me, TD sequential and Ishimoku cloud, because I just noticed that trends happen to be 9 to 10 hours long if they continue in the same direction. Which is why you see Bitcoin have like these really strong 4 hour candlesticks, because typically there's a retracement that occurs after the second 4 hour candlestick hits its highest point rather. Anyways, let's just go ahead and move on. So let's look at the 15, just quickly identify some entry points here for us, or potential entry points. I don't even know if there is one right now. Let's go ahead and see, and kind of see what's going on here. So if you're new to the channel, I always try to like to treat this like you are. Apologies if you heard me say this hundreds of times before, but we always utilize the EMA and VWAP lines on the 15-minute chart. It's my go-to. And the reason why is because we want to have less indicators on each chart, right? MACD and RSI, great. They work on pretty much every time frame. They serve a purpose, but you don't base your decision solely on those things, right? Every time frame has a good indicator. 4 hours, 1 hour, 4 hours and 1 day chart. We're looking at MACD and RSI and the moving averages, simple moving averages. 1 hour chart, Ishimoku cloud and TD sequential, hands down. 15-minute chart, nothing else you need to use except for EMA 15 and the VWAP. So VWAP is volume weighted average price. That's the price expressed, correction, the volume expressed as a price. So what that basically just means is that you take the volume of the last 24 hours and it tells you what the price should be. So that's where we're at right now. Now, keep in mind, VWAP does reset. Volume weighted average price has to reset every 24 hours to reset the standard deviation, because it will get larger as the time goes on. So I would say that the VWAP is most accurate about halfway through its cycle, which is 12 hours. Right now, it just reset, and we're looking at it becoming a support and potential resistance level. It's testing it right now. But the price is below, it's considered resistance, above is support. Now on a bull run, you'll see it's commonly going to be staying above, but what it does is it can also come down and test that level. So this is a period of consolidation, hard to really judge, but once it broke above and stayed above VWAP, this is a consideration for entry right here. All right. Now, all color aside, when we also note too, what we want to identify is the fact that we want confirmation. So to take entry in the 15-minute chart, what is confirmation? I mean, you might think to yourself, I need 5 minutes of confirmation knowing that I'm going to head in the right direction. That's incorrect. 30 minutes is the minimum. The reason why I say that is because I'm a patient trader. On the 1 day chart, it's a different story than the 15-minute, right? 15-minute chart, it's great because the fact that when you see 2 consecutive green bars, it tells you you have confirmation going in the direction it's heading, right? So two green bars in a row, likely the bulls are in control. 2 red bars in a row, the bears are in control. But if this occurs above EMA and VWAP, which are both working as support and resistance levels and continuous momentous indicators, then you're in really, really good shape. Okay, so to me, seeing something like this with these yellow indicators, that's a big, big impact, right? That's very important. That tells us that we are in good shape to consider taking entry because we have confirmation above VWAP and EMA. So you see the price back here comes above EMA and VWAP. That would work as well. Get a little excited and start stumbling on my words, but I think you get the point, right? At least I hope you do. If you don't watch a few of my other videos, I explain this pretty much every single time because it just works, right? For my signal group right now, I'm averaging about 80% success rate. I think the average trader is probably somewhere in the 50 or 40% range, at least if you are not very proficient. Not saying that you are, it's just that when I utilize these signals, they help me find good entry points, right? Because again, I'm not just jumping in based on the 15-minute chart and seeing this confirmation. We identified the MACD also showed a convergence. We identified that we're in a bullish trend right now, but we probably only have about an hour or 2 left of that momentum. And we're above the cloud, so we're doing pretty good here. So I'd say SAND will continue to increase, but in the next 2 hours, we want to see how the price tests the 68-cent range. Okay. Now, even though it seems like it's doing well, and it's probably going to go sideways for a bit, there's a strong chance that it would work its way down and possibly test 68 cents. Because again, that's like 50% of the variance between the top and the bottom of this recent bull run. And it's also a potential resistance too, because it was tested on the 1 hour chart. We saw that a good 2 or 3 times. There we go. Twice and it broke through. All right. So just things to kind of note, things to understand. But simply put, this is a really nice bull run as I've identified. If you can see that staircase pattern, up, over, up, over, up, over. It's just that this up was too far. There's just too far of a standard deviation. I mean, if we look at the VWAP before it reset for the price action, 32%. That is huge. Anytime the variance between the VWAP and the price action is more than 10%, it's I wouldn't say a cause for concern, but it's cause for potential retracement and a rebound. Again, this is a pretty strong bull run. There's a chance it could continue upwards, but the fact that the price is overextended at this point, I venture to guess RSI even on the 15 was recently very high, still upper 60s. We're probably going to see some kind of sideways action, if nothing else, for a little while, and then maybe another jump. But just bear in mind, if Bitcoin can continue to do what it's done recently, then we will see Sandbox crank out maybe another, I don't know, 10, 20 cents. We could even hit, what, $1? That's very possible. I don't think Sandbox has done that yet, right? Is this the, what was the highest point? 91 cents, approximately. Okay, so I would say that's the next major resistance. And if we go on another bull run, expect the price to possibly bounce off of 91 cents. But right now, we're kind of in recent uncharted territories. There is a secondary resistance potential at about 83 cents. So maybe consider that as well. That might be the more immediate resistance level. But again, we got to see a little bit more price action from Bitcoin. We want to see Sandbox go sideways for a little bit longer, at least to 12, 24 hours, so we can have a comfortable increase. Because as we saw before, I mean, the last 4 days has jumped up about 100% of its original price. In order to see another 20, 30%, we have to have some kind of sideways action, or it's going to come crashing back down. So if you found benefit, please consider liking and subscribing. Really greatly appreciate my community members. Feel free to reference my Patreon account if you'd like to show your support. I have an awesome signal group, good group of folks in there as well. We're all learning a lot. And more importantly, I'm sending out signals. We have good communication, so you can message me as well through that. So, just appreciate you all. See if we can learn as much as we can. Join my Telegram community too if you haven't already. Social medias, all that jazz. Thanks again for your time. Hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one.